Rule number 1, don't hurt people. If you go to your local libertarian club, you'll probably be reading Murray Rothbard and you'll talk about the non-aggression principle. Why do we have to make it that complicated? You shouldn't hurt people unless somebody messes with you. And you have a right to defend yourself if someone goes after your family or your country. It's not that complicated. Don't take people's stuff. We all agree that you shouldn't rip off your neighbor, you probably shouldn't rip off your neighbor's bank, and you probably shouldn't even steal his identity online. But why do we think that outsourcing stealing to a third party is okay? You elect an official, he goes to Washington, and he steals money from somebody you don't know to give it to somebody else you don't know. In the process, I guess, making us all feel better about ourselves that we helped. My theory, hopefully consistent with the values of liberty, is that there's not good government stealing or bad government stealing, but there is limited or unlimited stealing. That's why we believe in the rule of law. The rules after this get really radical, so be careful. Rule number 3, take responsibility. It really annoys me when I debate Chris Matthews and he talks about, well, it just annoys me when I debate. But his favorite line, and Barack Obama said the same thing to Rolling Stone magazine, I know who you are, you're one of those Ayn Rand guys. I believed that once and then I grew up. And they dismiss it, and Barack Obama is great about drawing this fundamental dichotomy. You can either have individual liberty, or you can have community. You can't have both. So if you're gonna be an individualist, you would do anything to anybody to get ahead, to get rich. You'd even mug your grandma, right? Or you can have this rich sense of community where people are helping each other. And I did some empirical research on this, and as it turns out, every community that I studied was made up of individuals. And, you know, I've read my Hayek. Voluntary cooperation and tapping into local knowledge and the things that you know about yourself and your family and your aspirations and everything you want to do in your life, coming together in voluntary association with other people, this is where communities come from. This is where the rules come from. This is how we do things together that nobody could do all by themselves. But if you outsource compassion to a third party, or if you force someone to care at the point of a gun, all that goes away. People stop helping each other. People stop caring. You actually have an excuse not to step up because you're like, oh, Washington's got that. I think it's better if we take that responsibility. Freedom is a burden. It's not a blank check to do whatever you want. It's the responsibility of knowing that if you don't do it, somebody might not do it. If you don't fix a problem, if you don't step up, it might not get done. But I happen to be a community organizer, and I reject this idea. We need to take back the word community from the left, because they are destroying communities because they don't respect individuals. And there's an angry progressive right out there. What rule am I on? 3? 4. Oh, rule number 4. Work for it. You guys noticed, you guys saw the speech from Ashton Kutcher about 6 months ago where he was talking to the Teen Choice Awards. And Hollywood went bananas because he said, opportunity looks a lot like hard work. And apparently this is controversial in Hollywood today. But I think we need to take back the word work too. And work is not just a grind, it's not just what you have to do every day. It's the opportunity to do something that someone else hasn't done before. It's an opportunity to own your own future. And again, it's a burden. It's not always fun because you might fail. You think about, Ludwig von Mises talks about entrepreneurs and how they have this unique judgment to look around the corner of time and history to imagine something that hasn't happened yet. Think about Steve Jobs and the iPhone. Do you think anybody ever laughed at him? Thought he was ridiculous and this just wasn't going to amount to anything. Entrepreneurs always get laughed at, and it's not just successful tech entrepreneurs, it's anybody that's trying to solve a problem. Maybe it is someone that's trying to help their neighbor that's in trouble. But if you don't do it, who's going to do it? But the upside is so cool, right? You can do something for yourself, for your family, for your community. You might even make $1 billion, but it's not really about making money, is it? It's about doing that thing that you wanted to do and look yourself in the mirror and say, I did that. The left hates that stuff. And I don't get why that is. Rule number 5, mind your own business. And I'm going to start a fight here with the crowd on this one. We obviously know that we don't like it when the government snoops on our private lives, when they collect our phone metadata, and our good friend Lindsey Graham tells us, if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. Isn't that the first principle of American justice? Guilty until proven innocent? Wait, no, it's the other way, right? That gets back to that gray-suited bureaucrat thing. But I think I happen to consider myself a Tea Partier, libertarian, a constitutional conservative, classical liberal. I worked for the Republican Party. I've done all these things, and as schizophrenic as that sounds, I think it's all kind of the same thing. It's different stages in the structure of production. When I was 20 years old, I decided that I wanted to get engaged to my now wife of 27 years. And I was one of those crazy libertarian kids that read all of this stuff. And when I discovered I had to get the government's permission to get married, I was really pissed off. I had to get a license from the government. I had to get their sanction on the most precious relationship I had. Why does the government do that? Taxes. So let me ask you guys, who here is pro-gay marriage? Who's here pro-traditional marriage? Who here thinks that the government shouldn't have an opinion about my marriage? So this would be the consensus opinion, because I actually think that most Americans are there. A marriage is a social institution. It comes from your church. As it turns out, my wife and I had about a 5-second argument about this, and I lost. There are certain sources of authority that really matter. One of them happens to be her. A second one happens to be her grandma. And a third one happened to be their priest. I respect their authority. I don't respect the government's authority to have an opinion about my marriage. I think we need to tackle that issue, because I don't think that most Americans want 535 people that can't even balance the budget to redesign our most important values. I think we could win on that if we talk about it. Rule number 6, and I think this is the most important one, and I want to talk about this the most. Fight the power. That's why you're here today. That's why we're all doing what we do. And it's not enough to read the right books. It's not enough to sit on your couch and yell at Chris Matthews. It's not enough to be really frustrated that Americans re-elected Barack Obama thinking that he really cared about them. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And I think the world is different today. I've been organizing grassroots for most of my adult career. And it used to be guerrilla warfare, right? It used to be a lot like Sam Adams, when he would carefully orchestrate people dressed up like Indians to take over the ships and the tea and dump it over the side without hurting anybody, galvanizing the colonial public. awesome, greatest act of guerrilla warfare, and it fundamentally changed the colonial opinions about the British government. We don't have to do that now. There's a lot more of us than there are of those gray-suited bureaucrats. And all the senators and all the congressmen and all the lobbyists that get on their G5s and go to Washington to get a bailout, they used to monopolize information. That was their strategic weapon against us. And by the time we found out what they had just passed, those of us with lives and jobs and families and more important things to do than to worry about what politics was doing to screw us over. Yep. We were already done. The concentrated benefits of going to Washington were always paid for by the distributed costs of you guys. Today it's different. Today, when Nancy Pelosi posts that healthcare bill online, we as a community break up to work. I had a professor at George Mason University, Don Lavoie, who used to talk about the greater social intelligence that would come from liberty. Think about how that worked. By the time activists got to those town hall meetings in 2009, they literally had read the bill. And poor Justin Amash, he actually reads all these things. He's a lawyer, so maybe he can pull it off, but you ever seen the size of the healthcare bill? If we all had to read it before they passed it, it wouldn't have gotten done. But we broke it up, we shared it online. We developed this open source way of finding out things. We do that on everything now. We distribute the burden, and we know things that we didn't know before. And we don't depend on the New York Times to tell us what to think, because we have a multitude of sources. We set it up on our RSS feed, and we can find out what's going on without sacrificing our fundamental first goals. You can check in on Facebook once a day with your friends, and when you need to act, somebody who's paying more attention to you tells us, hey guys, it's time to act. There's a common core hearing in Tallahassee, we've got to get up there. This is power. This is what Thomas Jefferson would have dreamed about. Thomas Jefferson, the radical Democrat, who was always talking about we the people, right? Well, he didn't have a Facebook page. Like Walesa did not have live streaming from the docks of Gdansk, right? We do. So we have this opportunity. We have this opportunity to translate our values into values and connect with other people, but bottom line, government goes to those who show up. The only way we fix this thing is if we're willing to get involved. I'll finish on this thought. When I was a libertarian kid, we spent a lot of time chasing everybody else out of the room. And you really weren't a good libertarian unless you could find some way to disagree with people that you really disagreed with on everything, right? Has anyone ever been in that meeting? We got to get past that. Because we are now, I think, one of the most important social movements in the history of this country. And what we do next really matters. And we can talk about candidates, we could talk about constitutional conventions, we could talk about the perfect legislation, but it all comes down to one thing. You want to change your country, build a community. You want to stop a bad politician, build a community. You want to pass a constitutional amendment that limits the size of government, build a community. That's what we got to do. And we got to stop arguing about those few things that we disagree on and start focusing on these common values that we all agree on, even though there's always going to be one thing we don't agree on. Do you really think the founders agreed on everything? And Sam Adams was reportedly one of the most difficult people in the world to work with, but he did something really important. So I hope you guys will join me in this, and I hope you'll think about how we get from where we are today to where we want to be. Because you're not going to find it in a book. You're going to find it through shoe leather and connecting with other people and disproving Barack Obama when he says that individuals and communities are enough. Thank you very much.